From Samurai Brick, explore the worlds of Tatooine and beyond with the incredible Bosmutis. This mighty beast, straight from the sands of, well, strap in your minifigures and lead the charge across the dunes. And for the ultimate ride, these beasts are ready to bring the galaxy.
So this is Bosmutis and Landfish by Samurai Brick, codenames for Bantha and Blurrg. I'm not even sure where to start about the Bantha, as it is by far my favorite out of the two. We've never gotten a proper Bantha from LEGO, let alone a custom creator stepping up to the plate to imagine a physical release for a Bantha based on the Skywalker Saga video game. Samurai Brick introduced this figure in early 2023, originally with great success, and honestly, I can see why. It feels like it was plucked straight from the game, and it's just so surreal to look at. In terms of the actual build quality, I'm pretty awestruck at just how good it is. It's resin printed and seems to have a lot of processing done to it, like sanding, painting, and smoothing, as well as some print work done on places like the eyes and toes. The back end has some small dimples, which is a leftover from the printing process. Resin prints have support structures that are added onto the model when the mold has lifted elements. The assembly of the Bantha looks unexpectedly intricate. There's a few Lego pieces embedded underneath the feet and on the back saddle and its internals. Oh yeah, that's another thing. So Samurai Brick outdid themselves here. They included a swappable piece internally. You can see there's a button underneath the belly that lets you pop out the back piece and swap it with a standard tile plate. This is pretty useful in situations where you'd want to pose figures on the back, or even use an accessory like saddle builds that are part of the experience with owning this thing. I don't have the right parts from the saddle. It's totally an option that I think is so extra and makes the experience of owning this thing that much more interesting. There's a ton of range of motion and posability, which is another thing that's just absolutely crazy that they did not have to add, but just put in there anyway, that makes this figure that much more premium. I've been displaying this figure next to the Cantina, alongside some Jawas and Tusken Raiders. As a side note, that's usually what I do with customs after reviewing them. I'm not the kind of guy to just shove them away in a cursed customs bin. Well, at least most of the time. But I usually leave them out, mixed into my official collection, which is just another strong suit of the Bantha. It looks pretty official next to genuine LEGO creature elements. The Landfish, or Blurrg, is another surprising element with a really refined appearance. If I'm not wrong, the Skywalker Saga video game doesn't have its own interpretation of the Blurrg, so this would have to be the first for Samurai Brick to do some R&D to see what looks good and what doesn't. The final product is as polished as Bosmutis, and fits very well into my Mandalorian display. I'm lucky enough to have a Queel figure and an arm-printed Mando just to complete the thematic look of the figure alongside some relevant companion figs. The saddle is swappable as well, with a filled-in Blurrg back piece that's just there to represent an unsaddled Blurrg, just like how the Bantha has the flip-out plate piece. The assembly strategy for this figure is similar to the Bantha, as it does have two circular Lego tiles embedded into the feet. It seems like they either glued or binded the assembly together so that it fits into the Lego system. The feet on both the Bantha and the Blurrg fit into the Lego system symmetrically, so they aren't just parts that fit into the studs. They also are spaced out exactly by 1x4 on both figures. The jaw is posable, but it just doesn't have the same range of motion like the Bantha. The last thing I will mention is the pricing on these figs. So the Bantha is roughly $80 and the Blurrg is around $55. So the pricing is a bit steep, and it's definitely a hard sell for some, I can admit. While I did receive these units at no charge, if I had the chance to see these in person before purchasing them, I would have totally been won over. But then again, you're seeing this from the perspective of someone who collects customs, and I'm willing to pay a little bit more than the average person for a specialized and niche product like this. I cannot stress enough that the build quality for both of these figures is immensely good, and I'm very impressed with it. There are times to complain about pricing, but I just don't think this is one of those times for a lot of reasons. From the build quality to art style, commodity, and the fact that this kind of product is just so hard to pull off economically, there's a lot of research and development involved that goes into the process of producing a very refined product like this. I'm guessing that both of these things have gone through so much prototyping and refinement that the end consumer unfortunately had to pay that cost. But as someone who has worked with resin and digital sculpting, it's overall a really costly process and involves a lot of hands on board. So there definitely isn't just one person working on this. Okay, so if you're won over by my description of these guys, how can you get a hold of one? Well, Samurai Brick just did a second pre-order wave that closed earlier last month. However, if you check out their page and give them a follow, you can get some updates on when the next restock is happening. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys, so I'll see you guys in the next one.